This Feast of Pentecost is a really big feast in itself, but also it closes the Easter season 50 days after Easter. And the word Pentecost means 50. And this feast day has a vigil feast or a vigil set of readings, and then the readings of today. And there's options in both masses for different readings. So in all, it's probably about 9 or 10 readings that are offered. Plus, the missal that sits on the altar, there's another set of readings that can be celebrated on the vigil so that people can prepare, as we did last night after the 6 o'clock on until 8 this morning. We had the Eucharist reserved here on the altar, and people were praying all night to welcome in this Feast of Pentecost. The first reading is a great reading, and it's a very dramatic one, but it's also a bookend reading to the first reading last night. The first reading last night is a story of the Tower of Babel, and these people in this region had grown in great numbers, but also in great pride. So they were mumbling to themselves how they were going to build this city and a huge tower reaching way up into the heavens where they would be bigger and better than everybody. And in this story, it's clearly a story. God says, I don't know about these people. They think they're so big and so great. So he decides to smash the tower, send them flying down to the ground, and when they get up from the ground, they're all speaking different languages. They were completely separated from one another and could not even understand each other. And that's what pride does. Pride gets in us and cuts us off from one another. It's amazing how dead we can become to one another because of pride. But the exact opposite of that is love, and love is the great unifier. When love enters people, they can cross boundaries of culture, religion, color, politics, conservative and liberal, anything, because love is greater. And people can see a value in love that unifies regardless of all the obstacles. So the scriptures invite us to this appreciation, and the gift of the Spirit comes upon people and does amazing things. So in this first reading today, this reversal of the story of Babel, we have this people gathered, and they admit from the beginning, hey, we're from all over the place, and they name a list of 8 or 9 different cities, different languages, and then these Galileans get up to speak in their language, and every single person in every single language understands them in their own language, although they're speaking Galilean. And they comment, how is this so? And they recognize that the Spirit of God has been poured into them in this event, gathering people of such diversity and making them one. Now, the beauty of this feast is so great, but the trouble is, how many of us ever have experienced anything like this, an outpouring of the Spirit that has these verifiable effects in everybody? It's possible we went on a Kairos retreat or Cursillo or a search retreat or some experience that cracked us open, and we had this enormous, powerful visit by the Spirit of God that changed our lives. But that's a very tiny percentage of the church. Rather, we're more like the second reading, which is a very gradual thing, that we grow in our faith. We're baptized as babies, we're baptized a little older, some people here, and we just grow slowly. And we can't even perceive the difference from day to day. It's such a gradual growth. But nonetheless, this Word of God says, nobody can really call Jesus Christ Lord unless they've been touched by the gift of the Spirit. Now, I know a lot of people do it from their head. Oh, of course, Jesus Christ is the Son of God. He is Lord. I mean, if we learn it, we know it here. But to speak it from here requires the gift of the Spirit. And when we are touched by the Spirit, definitively, to know Jesus Christ as Lord in our lives, all kinds of things can change. Now, I want to share with you some of this gradual growth, both positive and negative. You can get this on your browser. Someone asked me for it after Mass. I said, well, I don't know where it is, but if you just write this in, children are what they learn, or something like that. Children are, if a child lives with criticism, ... and this stuff will come up. So here it says, children are what they learn. All the children listen to this. If a child lives with criticism, he learns to condemn. If a child lives with hostility, she learns to fight. If a child lives with ridicule, he learns to be shy. If a child lives with shame, she learns to feel guilty. If a child lives with tolerance, he learns to be patient. If a child lives with encouragement, she learns confidence. If a child lives with praise, he learns to appreciate. If a child lives with fairness, she learns justice. If a child lives with security, he learns to have faith. If a child lives with approval, she learns to like herself. If a child lives with acceptance and friendship, he learns to find love in the world. You've all heard this before, huh? Something similar. I think it's really true. And the operative word there is they learn. All of those things are learned in life. They're learned because we're taught slowly but surely day after day. Words count. Words make a difference, both positive and negative. Well, I was thinking about this feast and thinking about its importance, thinking about what we should do as a parish, so suggested that we have this overnight vigil all night to pray for the coming of the Feast of Pentecost, especially in this year of mercy. But I thought about it more, and it's partly something that happened this last year, I don't know, a year ago, 10 months ago. And the reason for the retreats that I've been giving, and another one coming up this Saturday in Spanish, is because I faced the fact. I said, this is my last parish. I'm 66, and I won't be going to another parish. I'll end up my priesthood in this parish. Then I'll either die and go to heaven, hopefully, or I will. My mind will get bad, and my body will be here, and I won't know who I am or where I am. Or I'll just live here till I retire, and then I'll help in priestly ministry, but won't be pastor. So that's where I'm at. And I said, wow, I'm at the last 5 or 10 years of my priestly ministry. What have I done? What can I do? And I stopped and thought about it. And it's not just me. All priests, by and large, we do a ministry of maintenance because we have a lot of work to do. I'm going to 5 masses today, 3 in a row here. Then I'm rushing over Encino because a sister nun who lives on the next block is celebrating 60-year anniversary as a nun, asked me to go to this Mass. And then I'm going back to All Souls in Alhambra for my 5th Mass. Last Saturday I had 6. And some people say, well, what does a priest do? He maintains a whole bunch of stuff for liturgies and celebrations, counseling appointments, preparing for marriage, teaching, all kinds of stuff. But it's all maintenance, keeping maintained what exists. We may create little things here and there, a different class, but it's mostly maintenance. And quite frankly, it doesn't do a whole bunch to stir people to faith. It just maintains their faith. And we give up on after 15, we're finished with you. Adults get very little unless they go search it out on their own. So after confirmation, that's it. All you get is 15 minutes a weekend. And let me tell you, preaching at Mass is not an easy task. You're given these scriptures, deal with this. But also, why don't you say something about liturgy and spirituality? Get it all in there in 15 minutes. If a person is lucky, they hear some of it. But I can't tell you the number of times I read a gospel, and Jesus said to this blind man, blah, 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 or whoever, Bartimaeus or blah, 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 and right after the gospel I say, now, who was Jesus speaking to? And here's the look I get. I don't know. I just read it. Well, what's the matter with us? Our lives are bombarded. We are so pressured. There's so much noise. In my room, I can feel one of the boom boxes in cars going by beating off my chest. The sound waves, I think they are. I feel them. There's noise everywhere, all the time. There's pressure, there's schedules, there's rushing, there's traffic, there's lines, there's requests, there's demands. You just mention it. There's 5 times more of everything. And the only way we hear the Spirit is we become very quiet. We listen very deeply. We stop paying attention to all the stuff that's yelling at us constantly, even from within. So I said, these 15 minutes aren't enough. What can I do? I read a book, I reflected on my own experience, and I decided I'm going to give a monthly retreat, the same retreat for 5 years. My goal is to get 80% of this parish to go to it, because this is the gift. I get to spend a day with my parishioners talking about Jesus. The reason I became a priest 40 years ago, to spread the good news about Jesus Christ. And I get a whole day from 9 to 4:30 just to talk about Jesus, what he taught, what he said, what was his example, and more than that, to ask the question, what does he want for us in our faith? What does he want? Because quite frankly, we don't get time to talk about it. I give time for people to talk to each other about it. I spend a day with the Lord. Well, about a few weeks ago, I had read this book, someone gave it to me, Matthew Kelly. He's an Australian layman, goes all over the world preaching. He's amazing, written several books, a lot of articles, done a lot of CDs, DVDs, and he wrote this one, Rediscover Catholicism. 97% of the book, I loved it. About 3% was a bit preachy to me. I went, too much sugar, but the 97% was amazing. Collects things, pulls things together, explains and shares our faith in a vibrant way that makes you walk away saying, this 2,000 history, we're pretty good. God has done some wondrous things in our community of faith. It's a must-read. It sells for $18. We're selling it for $5. What a deal, what a deal. So I said to myself, on retreat, we're going to make it available. So about 3 weeks ago, we had an English retreat. 45 books went like that, boom. And I don't know how many today have sold, but it's here today. And I said, I know the perfect day to sell this is Pentecost. And ask people on this Pentecost day, rediscover your faith, get it. And then we're going to organize some book club days where we can come together and we will have read 3 chapters. And what did you find in those 3 chapters that really captivated you? I really highly recommend it. The retreat, this is all to do one thing, to let the Spirit of God in to touch us through some perhaps new knowledge or clarified knowledge, or an experience reflecting on the words of Jesus, his teaching. Let the Spirit in. Well, having thought more about it, I tried to think of someone in life who has done something like this. And I thought about Helen Keller. Now, I think I lived under a rock for a lot of years because I missed a bunch of things. One of them was the Helen Keller story, the movie, Anne Bancroft, what is it again? Miracle Worker. Anybody see it? Miracle Worker? Oh, check it out. My last year at St. Joseph, before I came here, one day I flicked on the TV and it was coming on, and I said, God, I have never seen the Miracle Worker. It was required reading, I think, for kids in school, but I missed that era. So I watched it, and I was blown over. Now, I knew her story basically, but I got to go into it in great depth. And what happens is, Helen Keller, she was born, and 18 months into life, she got ill. A very strong but a very quick illness, and the effects of it was that she lost her sight and her hearing. She could speak, but because she never heard words in a way she could remember them, she couldn't actually speak. She could only make sounds. So they raised her like an animal. She grew up in a relatively wealthy family, but nobody knew what to do with her. They thought she was basically an idiot. So she grew up like an animal. She'd take her food and throw it. All they did was try to contain her. She screamed and yelled and kicked, and they just contained her. Until they hired this nanny, Mrs. Sullivan, who came, and she also had a defect, either hearing or speaking, I forget which. But she was a great teacher. So she comes in and she says, I'll take the job, but on one condition. I use the guest house with her, and none of the family can have any contact with her. I forget for how long. So she takes her out there. They become alarmed here and there when they hear her screaming and yelling and things being thrown, but they agreed they wouldn't go out there. Sometime after some time, Miss Sullivan gets this breakthrough. She was using this technique, can't remember the name, but Tandora, I think, something like that. And she was pouring cold water over her hand, which she recognized Helen Keller recognized it, but she didn't have a word for it. And then she used the spelling technique on the hand with the water, and she got the concept and a way to express it. She was given a word that she could communicate. And once this breakthrough happened, she actually could write and spell something she understood, the concept of water. She went berserko on Sullivan and had her take her to everything she owned, everything that she had in her experience, even her doll, and she would touch it, put it to her hand, and then write the word. She got this enormous language. Then later on, I think at 10, she learned Braille. Hold on to your seats here. She learns Braille at 10, but not only in English. She learned it and she used it to read not only English, but also French, German, Greek, and Latin. I don't like this little girl. My goodness. She was very bright. What she did with her life, oh my God, she became an advocate for the poor and for workers and for people who were disadvantaged. And she became a worldwide speaker because she eventually was able to learn to speak, and she was an educator, recognized by every country in the world, invited by everyone to come and speak because she had such a major impact. The Spirit, I say the Spirit of God, whether or not, I don't know what faith she was, penetrated into this woman, because any spirit is really of the Spirit. And the Spirit touched Helen Keller, and she broke out of a life of idiocy, a life of being like an animal, and she became an educated woman who had a huge impact in the world. That's Pentecost. That's Pentecost. Pentecost is being Helen Kellerized. Helen Kellerized. And that's what is supposed to happen to us. Every year, I've been celebrating for 66 years Pentecost. Have we been Helen Kellerized? Has anything gripped our spirit, touched our spirit, pulled, yanked at our spirit, and said, you can, you should, you must, you are able to? Now, we are gifted at this Mass, because I'm looking at all these people in these white robes. They were baptized and confirmed and received their first Eucharist on Easter Vigil night. All of them, you know why? Because they're all over 6 years of age. And the church says up until 6 years, they have to draw a line somewhere. You can be baptized like an infant. Now, sad to say, a 4 or 5-year-old, like a 6-year-old, can understand quite a bit. But if a parent comes in and their child is 4 and say, wouldn't you like to go in the RCIA? Well, it takes 2 years. And what? Oh, I don't think so. 6-year-old comes in and say, you have to go in the RCIA, but I want a baptism real fast. Can't do it. The church won't let me now. They have to be taught because they can understand. So all of them were blessed to be over 6, and they went through 2 years, and then on the Easter Vigil night, they were baptized and confirmed to receive their first Eucharist, and they understand a lot. And more than an infant, they had a chance to come to know the Lord and to walk with the Lord for 2 years together and with us, and to grow in their faith, and then to receive these sacraments, bringing them into the church. In fact, today, at the end of the Mass, they'll take off these white robes that they've been wearing during this season that they are called neophytes, new Christians. And today they take them off and they have their ordinary clothes underneath, and then they're going to blend in with us. We won't even notice them. They'll just be one of us. But really, do we recognize what this Pentecost is supposed to mean to us? My prayer for this community and for me in this community for these next 5 years is to do whatever I can to help Pentecost become more real to each person here. It's to Helen Keller everyone I can, not I can, God using me just as He uses you to touch me and to touch one another. But it seems to me Helen Keller was given an enormous gift, but she also opened to this gift. Can you imagine the amount of work that she had to do with all of the limitations she had, even though she was very gifted in her mind and spirit? But she grabbed on and she made it happen. I feel like one of the disadvantages of us being baptized as babies, as infants, we get into a spiritual rut. We grow so gradually, we don't really see much change. Oh yeah, we have our first communion day and it's quite beautiful, but then we get into more. And even if we go on a great retreat and get very spiritually aroused, we get up to this arousal level and then we can just sink back to doing the same. It can become so routine that sometimes you'll see people, it's very rare, I haven't seen one for about 22 years, but I was at the theater one day and someone came into a movie theater and this is what they did when they got to their row. And I thought, oh my God, they think they're in church. But they're so used to walking down an aisle with rows, they did their genuflection just out of routine. But Pentecost is break out of the routine. Let the Spirit in. And if the Spirit comes in, just what might the Spirit do to us? Just how might the Spirit speak to us? And so, I really pray. My prayer, I say 80%, I really want 101%. I know it doesn't exist, but 100, well, maybe that 1%, someone from another parish, to come in and go to this retreat to experience an opportunity to listen to Jesus, and then to maybe ask a couple questions. Jesus, what do you want from me? Jesus, what do you want to see happen to me? Jesus, how would you want to use me? Jesus, where are you taking me? Where are you leading me? Jesus, what does it mean to receive the gift of your Spirit? They're all questions that only when they are asked can they give us an answer and give us some new life. Today we celebrate Pentecost, and my prayer is that all of us find the Spirit and all of us find some new life.